You'd think after a decade of marriage, 2 Ivy League degrees, and enough LinkedIn endorsements to crash a server, you'd know the person sleeping next to you. That's what I thought anyway. Caroline and I were Yale's golden couple once. Or maybe more accurately, Yale's golden rebrand. High-achieving, good-looking, smug in that effortless East Coast way. I was the polished startup guy who gave keynotes in cufflinks. She was the policy genius everyone wanted on their board. Together, we were LinkedIn porn. But that was then. Now, I was the guy who got ghosted by his own wife's email CCs. It started subtle, as betrayal always does. You never hear the bomb until your ears are already ringing. Caroline had been traveling more, conferences, panels, women in innovation retreats where the wine was always better than the Wi-Fi. I didn't question it. She was big league now, advising NGOs, getting shout-outs in Harvard Business Review, being photographed next to senators who pretended not to recognize her in public. Then homecoming weekend came around. This was usually our thing. We flew in, shook hands, gave smug nods at the freshmen who didn't recognize us, and basked in the reflected glow of who we used to be. This year, though, she said something odd. Let's split panels this year. Double our impact. Split panels? We'd never done that. We were always the pair, the duo, the couple other alumni measured their post-grad energy against. But I played along, smiled, nodded like I wasn't already counting how many times she'd forgotten to copy me on donor correspondence. Sure, I said. We'll divide and conquer. Her panel was titled Ethics and Influence in Modern Leadership. I nearly choked on my smoothie when I saw the listing. Mine was less glamorous, scaling responsibility in startups. Basically a fancy way of saying, try not to ruin people while getting rich. But here's where things started to smell off. 2 weeks before the gala, a school newsletter dropped. Routine fluff, donor updates, campus construction news, photos of students pretending to study under perfect lighting. But one blurb caught my eye. Congratulations to alumnus Peter Halden, 08, on his recent appointment as Director of Policy Innovation at the Carter Foundation. A longtime advocate of collaborative leadership, Halden credits Caroline Ames as a key influence and thought partner. Thought partner. I read it twice. Then 3 more times. Peter Halden, that smug, eternally tanned fraud from my class, used to run a barely legal political newsletter back in college. Always quoted dead philosophers like he knew them personally. He'd resurfaced last year asking me for intros to a few nonprofit investors. I'd forwarded him names. He never responded. Now he was name-dropping my wife as his influence. So I Googled. Turns out his big promotion came after he submitted a sweeping policy reform proposal to the Carter Foundation's ethics division, the paper that apparently got him hired. Which would have been fine if the abstract hadn't sounded exactly like a dinner conversation Caroline and I had 6 months ago. Word for word. I remembered it because I told her theory sounded too idealistic for Washington. Guess she found someone more agreeable. Turns out the smell of betrayal isn't fire and brimstone. It's toner ink and hotel conference coffee. After reading that school newsletter twice, 7 times, I didn't rage, didn't confront, didn't storm into our marble-tiled kitchen to demand answers. No, I did what every cold-blooded strategist does when they realize they've been underestimated. I smiled, put the kettle on, and started digging. Peter Halden, class of 2008. Major in political theory, minor in self-worship. The last time I saw him was 3 years ago at a donor brunch where he tried to pitch me a decentralized lobbying app. Yes, really. I passed, and he hadn't reached out since, until he suddenly needed my contacts for ethical investment partners. I sent him 5 names. Not one thank you. Ghosted. I figured he was just being his usual graceless self. But now he was somehow getting quoted in the Yale Bulletin with my wife's name attached to his success? Let me paint the picture a little clearer. Caroline and I weren't some trophy couple. We were the kind of people who built trophies for other people to envy. She ran policy circles in D.C. that made actual senators pause mid-spin. I'd sold 2 startups before 35, one of which got acquired by a multinational that couldn't spell human-centered design, but wanted the PR glow of it anyway. We were power adjacent. Not famous, but famous enough to get seated near the front at donor galas. The kind of couple alumni magazines love to feature on page 3, arms around each other, teeth professionally whitened. So yeah, when I read that Peter got his new position based on a policy proposal, and that Caroline was listed as a key collaborator. I knew something was off, because she never mentioned it. Not once. I checked our calendar. The date of Peter's proposal submission to the Carter Foundation, which was publicly timestamped, bless transparent institutions, lined up exactly with the spa weekend Caroline had taken in D.C. That weekend, she told me she just needed to recharge with some girlfriends and get her head on straight before the alumni event. Sure. I checked her Instagram. One photo from the hotel rooftop. A glass of wine, a paperback novel face down beside it. Caption: disconnect to reconnect. Right. Except the hotel in question was a boutique business hotel right near Capitol Hill. Not exactly spa central. So I did what any former founder with too much bandwidth and a grudge would do. I got petty. Quietly. Surgically. I started small. I searched her inbox. We still had a shared server for tax reasons. Technically legal access, but morally. Well, the point of this story isn't morality. Nothing direct with Peter, but I found a forwarded message chain labeled Gala Coordination Ethics Panel Drafts. In it, I found something she clearly meant to delete. A Word doc revision history with 2 names, Caroline Ames and P. Halden. That was the confirmation I needed. My wife helped this walking haircut write the very proposal that landed him a career-defining position. And instead of telling me, she hid it. Worse, she let him ghost me. Let me twist in silence while she ghost-wrote the golden ticket for a man who couldn't spell bipartisanship without autocorrect. But I wasn't done. I had a suspicion, an ugly one. I remembered that proposal. Not in detail, but the themes, the cadence. Because it wasn't just dinner table talk. It was her old thesis work from grad school. Back when she still shared her ideas with me before the world. The paper had never been published. She shelved it after getting swamped with consulting gigs. But I'd read it cover to cover. Helped her shape it. Even gave her a phrase or two. So if Halden's Carter Foundation proposal was plagiarized from Caroline's old thesis, and that was now the backbone of his promotion, then they were both frauds. He for stealing. She for enabling. And me? I was sitting on a bomb. But here's the part that really got under my skin. She was proud of it. The more I watched her prepare for the alumni weekend, the more I saw it. That gleam. That low-key buzz in her voice whenever she mentioned the panel. Her eyes flicked when I brought up the gala dinner. Excited to sit together again this year? I asked. Oh, I might get pulled into a few other tables, she said too quickly. Some policy donors I need to cozy up to. Cozy. Right. I said nothing. Just nodded. Made a mental note. That night, I went into the attic and pulled out a battered manila folder. Caroline's thesis. Annotated, in my handwriting, because we still used pens back then. I compared it line by line to Halden's public summary of his Carter proposal, which was helpfully posted on their site under thought leadership. It wasn't just influenced by her. It was hers. Copy-pasted, mildly reworded, with a splash of pseudo-original jargon. And you know what? That was my tipping point. Not the affair, not the betrayal, but the arrogance of thinking no one would notice. That they could launder stolen intellect through a gala panel and a newsletter and walk away golden. So I started planning. The Yale Alumni Gala was the centerpiece of homecoming weekend. A black tie affair where old money clinked glasses with new influence, where awards were quietly hinted at and rivalries masked with champagne toasts. It was also the one place Caroline never missed, because her entire professional circle orbited around appearances. I reached out to the organizing committee, told them I'd like to announce a new scholarship fund. Joint donation. My wife and I, giving back to the university that shaped us. Of course, they were thrilled, especially since I offered to deliver the announcement personally at the gala. A short address, I said. Just a few heartfelt words. A surprise for Caroline, too. She doesn't even know I'm doing it. Everyone loves a sentimental husband moment. They bought it completely. The trick, though, the part that made it revenge and not just showmanship, was what I planned to read after the announcement. Because see, I didn't just want to expose Halden. I wanted to rip the scaffolding out from under both of them. To hit Caroline where she lived, her image, her intellect, her moral brand. I got a copy of Halden's actual Carter application. Not from him. He wouldn't have coughed that up with a crowbar. But from a contact I had who worked internal policy reviews at the foundation. Took some favors. A little trade. But I got it. And in it, paragraph 3, word for word, lifted from Caroline's thesis, including a phrase I coined back in 2011 over boxed wine and takeout. structural integrity through stakeholder disruption. Nobody talks like that. Except me. I printed the page, tucked it behind my speech, folded the paper crisply, like a lawyer preparing closing arguments. Because I wasn't just burning a bridge. I was building a bonfire, and everyone would be dressed for it. Alumni galas always smell the same. Old money, new cologne, and just enough desperation to make the wine go down fast. Yale's was no different. Brass chandeliers, cocktail jazz that sounded expensive without being good, and room after room of people who once mattered trying to remind each other that they still did. Caroline looked incredible. I'll give her that. She wore a deep green gown with a slit that whispered ambition and a neckline that hinted strategy. Hair up, earrings that said I still take calls from senators, and a smile calibrated to charm, deflect, and dominate in a single glance. She kissed my cheek when I entered the reception hall like nothing in the last month had happened. Like I hadn't watched her spend 6 straight days texting Peter Halden with the same glow she used to save for me. You look sharp, she said, giving me the once-over. Glad you didn't wear the startup tux. Decided to go old school. Yale deserves a little tradition, I replied, smiling just enough. She smirked. Try not to fall asleep during the speeches. Oh, I'm wide awake tonight. She didn't catch it. The gala was packed. Professors, donors, startup celebs pretending they still remembered their dorms. A full orchestra played near the mezzanine. I caught a glimpse of Peter across the room, laughing a little too hard at something a dean said. Tanned, smug, wearing a navy tux with peak lapels that screamed, I finally belong. He looked relaxed. That wouldn't last. We made it through the first round of speeches. Usual stuff. State of the university, an update on the capital campaign, applause lines for diversity initiatives none of the trustees cared about. Caroline got name-dropped twice. Once for her policy panel, once by a faculty member who described her as one of our generation's clearest voices on ethical leadership. I nearly snorted into my drink. At 8:45 sharp, they handed me the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, said the MC, we have a special announcement this evening from one of our most distinguished alumni. Please welcome Connor Ames. Applause. Some enthusiastic, some polite, a few confused. I walked to the podium slowly, let the silence build, smiled at Caroline, who blinked in genuine surprise. She thought I was going to praise her. Oh, honey. Good evening, I began. I'll keep this short. I know we're all itching for dessert and bad jazz. Chuckles. I stand here tonight, not just as a graduate of Yale, but as someone shaped by it. This place taught me how to think, how to build, how to take something abstract and make it real. A few nods, heads tilted in interest. Caroline was frozen, the edges of her smile faltering. So, I continued, my wife and I have decided to give something back. A scholarship, jointly funded, for students pursuing careers in policy innovation and ethical leadership. Big applause. Caroline blinked, covered her mouth. People turned to her, clapping. She nodded slowly, graciously, played along. But she knew something was off. I'd like to share something personal, I said, unfolding the page from my jacket. When I was a student here, I had a professor who told me that the best ideas are the ones you're willing to bet your name on. Caroline's smile dropped half a centimeter. I held up the page. This is from the Carter Foundation's Ethics Fellowship application, submitted last fall by a fellow Yale alum, Peter Halden. The room shifted. Subtle but real. Caroline's spine straightened. Peter looked up from his table, the fork halfway to his mouth. I want to read a short excerpt, I said. It's a beautiful paragraph. Really. And I quote, our institutions are not broken by bad actors, but by good people who stay silent while the system calcifies. We must introduce structural integrity through stakeholder disruption. Caroline's breath caught. Because that phrase, stakeholder disruption, wasn't just lifted. It was mine. Coined on a whiteboard, refined over wine, buried in a thesis she never published. I continued. Some of you might recognize that phrase. I certainly did. It comes, almost word for word, from a graduate thesis submitted in 2011 by a different Yale alum. A brilliant one. One who, for reasons unclear, never got public credit for it. Caroline's eyes went wide. Her jaw tightened. She mouthed something. I think it was, don't. I looked straight at Peter. I reached out to the Carter Foundation, I said calmly. They were interested in hearing that this section might not have been entirely original. A gasp from somewhere near the back. And so, I concluded, In the spirit of ethical leadership, we've decided to fund the scholarship under my wife's maiden name, Caroline Thatcher, because some ideas deserve their rightful name on them. Silence. Then a single clap. Then two more. Then the whole room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was something more raw. The kind of clapping people do when they realize they've been fed a story and someone just flipped the script. Caroline sat, frozen. Peter stood halfway, then sat down again. I nodded once, then handed the mic back. The MC stumbled through the next transition like he'd swallowed his tongue. I walked off stage slowly, drink in hand, heart calm. I didn't look at Caroline. Not yet. Let her feel it. Let her sit in it. She caught up to me 15 minutes later near the balcony. The orchestra was in full swing, trying desperately to return the mood to normal. "You smug son of a bitch," she hissed. I turned, sipping calmly. "Enjoying the gala? You blindsided me. Not half as hard as you blindsided my inbox with that creep's name in a byline. It wasn't an affair. Didn't say it was." She paused, caught herself, pivoted. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I restored authorship," I said. "You should be thanking me. That scholarship was real." "Oh, very. Funded and filed. Just not under Ames. That name's compromised." She stared at me, rage barely concealed. But beneath that, panic. Because she knew. The Whisper Network would start immediately. Her name was now tied to an ethics scandal, one she couldn't explain without implicating herself further. "You think this makes you look strong?" she asked. "You look petty. Vindictive." I shrugged. "Maybe, but also right." She stood there, stunned. For the first time in years, she didn't have a line. Didn't have a pivot. Just the crushing realization that she'd underestimated the wrong man. I leaned in close. "You built your image on righteousness," I said. "I just made it radioactive." Then I walked away. Past the donors. Past the professors. Past Peter, who couldn't meet my eyes. And I didn't look back. Damage doesn't always come with sound. Sometimes it's the silence after. The whisper trail, the glances at your back, the way people say your name slower, like it has new weight. Caroline didn't fall all at once. She cracked. Hairline fractures across a porcelain brand that used to gleam in every room. 3 days after the gala, the policy newsletter that once couldn't print fast enough to feature her left her name out completely. No quote, no panel recap, no thought leader spotlight. Just airbrushed absence. Like she'd never been there. The Carter Foundation removed Peter Halden's bio from their website by midweek. They didn't release a statement. That would have been too loud. They just wiped it. Quiet as a hit job. Someone must have spoken to someone. Yale didn't need more scandal in an election year. As for Caroline, she tried to salvage. Sent out her reflections on collaboration, piece, to a mid-tier publication. All soft-focus language. Lots of mutual growth, lessons learned, and a nauseating section on how even intellectual partnerships can get messy, but the work must go on. It tanked. Barely hit circulation. Her name in the byline looked like it had been pulled from a scandal, not a seminar. Meanwhile, I was busy thriving. It turns out a dramatic gala speech does wonders for professional credibility. I got 3 speaking requests within 48 hours. One from my old firm's VC partner. "We'd love your take on founder resilience." Cute. Another from a university that had ignored me for years, suddenly offering a spot on their Innovation and Ethics Board. I picked the third offer, an op-ed in The Atlantic. Not to gloat, too obvious. I wrote about the cost of misattribution in modern thought leadership. Didn't name names. Didn't need to. Everyone who mattered knew. It got shared 4,000 times. A popular tweet called it icy, intelligent, and devastating. My inbox turned into a quiet avalanche of "thank you for saying it." Caroline didn't respond, but her PR manager reached out. "Hi, Connor. We're doing a soft rebrand for Caroline in Q3. She's taking a sabbatical from panel work and shifting focus to mentorship. We'd like to respectfully ask that any future remarks avoid direct reference to the incident at Yale to prevent further confusion. Wishing you continued success. Translation, please stop speaking. She's bleeding out." I didn't reply. Not out of malice, out of clarity. I'd already made my statement. Anything else would have been piling on. And honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Still, the aftermath was fascinating to watch. People who used to orbit her started backing away. The social media reshuffle was subtle but obvious. No more tagged stories. No more Lunch with Legends posts. Suddenly, Caroline Ames was eating alone. And then there was Peter. He tried to tweet his way back into relevance. A thread appeared 2 weeks post-gala. Leadership means admitting when you get it wrong. I've made mistakes. I'm learning. Thank you to those holding me accountable. It flopped. For likes. One retweet from someone named at policy_babe who commented, "Yikes." That was the whole wave. No one bought it. Even performative regret has an expiration date. I won't lie, there was satisfaction in the silence. But it wasn't just ego. It was something deeper. See, Caroline and I never had the kind of marriage that explodes. No yelling, no cheating scandals, at least none I could prove. What we had was erosion. A quiet redistribution of power. She stopped asking what I thought and started asking what she could use. We went from partners to portfolio managers. I gave speeches. She edited my metaphors. She drafted policy. I gave her the hooks that stuck. But at some point, my contributions became invisible, or disposable, or, eventually, recyclable. That's what the Halden debacle really was. She didn't just cheat with ideas. She laundered them through someone else's voice and never expected me to notice. Like my brain was a service she once subscribed to and forgot to cancel. But here's the twist. I still kept the scholarship. Oh yeah? Fully funded. Announced on Yale's website. Under her maiden name, as promised, the Thatcher Prize for Ethical Innovation. I doubled the amount. Added a second grant for research on intellectual authorship in public policy. Even recorded a short video for incoming applicants. Innovation requires clarity and courage. This fund honors the value of original thought and the cost of letting others speak in your voice. I didn't mention Caroline. I didn't need to. She'd been etched into the plaque whether she liked it or not. And the irony? She couldn't protest it without confirming the whole thing. Her silence became consent. One night, a few weeks later, I saw her name in a calendar email, Yale's Spring Mentorship Series, listed under tentative. That meant maybe. That meant someone at the school was waiting to see if she'd recover. She wouldn't. At least not here. She might rebrand somewhere else. Get a consultancy gig in a city without context. People forget fast when you change time zones. But at Yale, her name would always come with a footnote. I thought that would feel colder, harsher, but it didn't. It felt like math, a simple equation of inputs and outcomes. Because when someone builds a throne out of your ideas and invites someone else to sit in it, there's only one way to level the court. You don't shout. You audit. It took Caroline exactly 43 days to realize silence wasn't a strategy. It was a sentence. And she wasn't the warden. She was the inmate. She emailed me on a Thursday. Subject line, coffee? That was it. Just 2 words. No greeting. No signature, like we were still married and this was just a check-in between meetings. The kind of message that might have worked a year ago. Back when I still thought loyalty was measured in calendar invites and shared Dropbox folders. I didn't respond. She followed up 2 days later. Longer this time. Connor, I know things got out of hand. I'm not reaching out to rehash it all. I'm reaching out because I think we're better than this. We made good things together. The scholarship, the panel work, it was real. Let's not let one moment erase everything. Caroline, one moment. She was calling the strategic theft of my intellectual legacy and the public laundering of my ideas through another man's career-defining promotion. One moment. I closed the email. Waited. And then I did the worst thing you can do to someone like Caroline. Nothing. I didn't write back. I didn't block her. I left the thread open. Visible. Unanswered. A blank space she had to live in. A digital echo of everything she'd thrown away. She tried again the following week. This time from her personal Gmail. Please call me. I want to explain what you didn't see. What it really was. I know I hurt you. But you hurt me too. That night. At the gala. You knew what it would do. Please just be human about this. Please. There it was. The tell. This wasn't about closure. It was about control. See, people like Caroline don't need forgiveness. They need narrative. They need the version of events that still lets them be the protagonist. They need the why to sound like it came from their mouth, not yours. They need to believe the betrayal was nuanced, complicated, layered in good intentions. Not just what it was. A choice. But she wasn't done. She tried a different angle. Social media. The slow rollout of her new mentorship platform began. A soft relaunch under the banner of Thatcher Insight. Same headshot, slightly rebranded colors. Quotes about resilience and reinvention that made me physically wince. My favorite? A setback isn't failure. It's a prompt to reframe the narrative. She posted that the same week, Yale quietly updated its online faculty affiliates page. Caroline Ames, once listed as a senior policy fellow, was now gone. Just deleted. The link redirected to a general department contact. No farewell post. No curated departure. And then came the podcast. Of course there was a podcast. She recorded a candid 30-minute interview with some DC media girl trying to make her own brand off interviewing disgraced policy influencers. It was called The Wreckin' Room. Subtle. I listened. Of course I did. Caroline kept it vague, clearly coached. She never named me, never named Peter. But if you knew the story, you could track the contours. The subtext dripped with curated humility. Sometimes you give too much of yourself to a vision and forget to protect your own voice. I trusted the wrong collaborator. I own that. But I was also used. Used. That's what she said. As if ghostwriting a man into a promotion behind my back and letting my words be paraded as his, counted as being used. As if I was the one who'd manipulated her. As if I'd somehow forced her into betrayal by what? Not being impressive enough. That's when I knew. She wasn't trying to rebuild. She was trying to rewrite. And not just for the public. For herself. Because if she could frame it just right, if she could reshape the wreckage into a redemption arc, then maybe she'd survive it. Maybe, eventually, she'd reappear in the circuit. Reclaimed. Rebranded. The fallen star who learned to shine again. She even tried a clever little PR twist. She announced a new initiative. The Ames Fund for Silent Contributors. Targeted at women whose behind-the-scenes work had been co-opted or ignored in collaborative spaces. She didn't even flinch at the irony. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. Because while she was launching ghost funds for the ghosted, I was moving. See, I'd spent the last month building a quiet little network of my own. Not public. Not branded. Just real connections. Professors. Researchers. Writers. All people who'd emailed me privately after the gala, thanking me for saying the thing they weren't allowed to. People with receipts. Turns out, Caroline had a pattern. She hadn't just helped Peter. She'd collaborated on at least 2 other major papers over the years, always off record, always under NDA or verbal agreement. And in each case, the men got the credit. She got the glow by association. Until she didn't. I compiled the quotes. Screenshots. One brave professor even forwarded me the version history of a white paper Caroline had quietly rewritten top to bottom, and then declined credit on when it won an academic grant. I didn't want to make it political, she told him at the time. It wasn't political. It was insurance. Caroline didn't need the footnote if the author still owed her something. She was building a soft power empire out of IOUs. Until she wasn't. I packaged it all in a dossier. Anonymous, but thorough. Sent it to a mid-sized policy blog that had once tried to book Caroline for a panel, only to be ghosted because they weren't prestige enough. They published it under the headline. Whose voice is it anyway? The curious case of uncredited collaborations in policy circles. No names. But the comments section exploded. She's clearly the subject. Is this about Ames? Oof, receipts. She didn't respond publicly. But 2 days later, the Ames Fund for Silent Contributors went offline. Site down. Social accounts scrubbed. No statement. No archive. Gone. Just like her credibility. She sent one last email. Just 3 lines. You didn't have to do this. You got your revenge. Now what? I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back. Just 1 line. Now I live with a name I didn't have to steal. And I clicked send. Some people rebuild. Others reinvent. Caroline disappeared. Not in the dramatic sense. No public statement. No tell-all interview where she cries into a cardigan about the cost of ambition. She just exited stage left. Slipped behind the curtain. 1 month, she was all over speaking circuits and leadership podcasts. The next, her name came up less and less in newsletters, panel invites, polite gossip circles. No one said why. They didn't need to. Scandal doesn't require fire. Just wind. That spring, Yale finalized the Thatcher Prize. Officially under her maiden name, as promised. No bio link, no photo. Just a title and a mission statement. To support original policy work in ethics and innovation. It looked clean, elegant, expensive. Exactly the kind of thing that draws the attention of young idealists and legacy donors alike. I funded it quietly for 5 years in advance. No gala, no speeches, just wire transfers and ironclad oversight. I even attached a clause. If any recipient ever plagiarized their work, the award would be revoked immediately and the funds reallocated to their cohort. One strike. Gone. No appeals. The irony wrote itself. Meanwhile, I'd moved on, or at least moved forward. Took a consulting gig in Boston. Started building a new startup on the side, this one in education tech. Quiet project. No buzz. Just engineers, code, and the satisfying silence of not having to compete with a spouse's press calendar. People asked me, sometimes, why I never remarried. The truth? I got tired of hearing my own words in someone else's mouth. I liked my solitude. It was honest. But the real ending? It didn't come until the next homecoming gala. 2 years later. I didn't plan to attend. I told myself I was over it, that I had no interest in the rubber chicken circuit of aging alumni, clinking glasses over mutual delusion. But then I got a call. It was from Yale's new policy director. Young, sharp, annoyingly enthusiastic. "We'd love for you to keynote this year," she said. "Your stories become something of a legend around here." Quietly, of course. Of course, I said. Quiet legends are the best kind. I agreed. Not for revenge. Not for spectacle. For closure. Well, that, and curiosity. I wanted to see if Caroline would show. The night of the gala was colder than usual. Late frost, slick sidewalks, the kind of evening that made old brick buildings feel like mausoleums. The reception was held in the same ballroom as before. Same lighting. Same overpriced wine. Different crowd. I didn't recognize half the faces. Which was perfect, because they all recognized me. The whispers followed me like perfume. Soft. Respectful. "That's him," someone muttered near the coat check. A guy in a gray tux whispered something to his date, who turned and stared just a beat too long. And then, across the room, there she was. Caroline. Thinner. Paler. Wearing black. Not bold black, but the kind that blends into curtains and disappears in group photos. No statement jewelry. Just a small silver chain, bare ears, and a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. She saw me. Didn't flinch. Didn't approach. We nodded. That was all. She didn't speak all night. She wasn't listed on the program. Just another guest now. No panel, no intro, no moment in the spotlight. She mingled with lower-tier donors. Shook hands with junior faculty. Smiled politely. The way you do when you're trying not to be remembered. And when I took the stage, she stood at the back. I didn't mention her. I didn't mention Halden. But I told the story, my version. I talked about authorship. About how intellectual theft doesn't always wear a ski mask. About how collaboration is beautiful, but attribution is sacred. About how silence lets mediocrity thrive in places brilliance once lived. The applause was long. Honest. Afterward, I stepped out into the cold. Caroline followed. She didn't speak at first. Just stood next to me in silence. Both of us staring at the moonlit quad like it might open up and erase what was. Finally, she said, "You did it." I turned. "Did what?" "You made me irrelevant." I shrugged. "You made you irrelevant." "I just put it on paper." She nodded. "No defense. No fight." "I thought I was helping people," she said. "Giving them a chance to shine." "You were laundering ideas," I said flatly. "You just happened to believe the ends justified the means." I believed in the work. So did I? That's why I signed my name to it. She swallowed. Cold air between us. Too much history. Not enough apology. "I still dream about it," she said softly. The speech. The way they looked at me after. I looked at her. "I don't." And then I walked away. Not out of cruelty. Out of peace. Because the truth is, revenge isn't the fireworks. It's not the standing ovation or the printed headline. It's the moment you see the person who betrayed you become a footnote in your own story. A shadow at the back of the room. Still watching. Still wondering how you did it. And knowing they never will. Subscribe to the channel